Alright guys, in today's video we have to talk about some frankly very disappointing news regarding Sony's Japan studio and how it seems as though we should no longer expect any original game development to be taking place at this studio. Now, I do want to take a moment here to ask you to leave this video a like. I know that when we're talking about news that's not good or exciting, it's easier to just not leave a like or maybe even leave a dislike. But if you do enjoy the content and you do enjoy the channel and you understand that I'm just the messenger here, I would really appreciate if you could leave a like, because that really does help, and YouTube actually does look at how many likes a video gets and uses that to determine how far reaching it's going to be. So hit that like button. Really appreciate that. But we're going to go over this report that comes from VGC. And Sony did actually officially announce this and confirm it. But there are some very interesting pieces of information that VGC has provided that I don't think Sony would ever comment on. And I think it goes a long way in explaining exactly why this has happened to Sony's Japan studio. So it says here, Sony is winding down original game development at its oldest first-party developer, Japan Studio. This is what multiple sources have told VGC. The iconic developer behind Ape Escape, Gravity Rush, and Knack has seen the vast majority of its development staff let go. This is what the source said, after their annual contracts were not renewed ahead of the company's next business year, which begins April 1st. Localization and business staff will remain in place, and ASOBI team, the group responsible for the ASTRO games, will continue as a standalone studio within Sony Japan, it's claimed. Some Japan studio staff will join ASOBI, we were told, while others have followed Silent Hill and Gravity Rush director Koichiro Toyama, who left Japan studio last year to form his new studio, Boca. It's not entirely clear if the restructure has affected the studio's external development department, which collaborated on games such as last year's Demon's Souls, but one person VGC spoke to suggested it would continue. And the original story continues by letting us know that multiple Japan studio developers have announced their departure from the company on social media in just the last few days, including the Bloodborne producer, video manager, and other individuals. Apparently the executive producer. Just, it's pretty clear that something bad is happening there at Japan studio. I've been thinking about this for a little while. We've kind of been seeing slowly more and more individuals just kind of leaving Japan studio, and I just kind of had a bad feeling that this was pretty much a sign that something isn't really right there. So it goes on to say that this also follows several high-profile staff at the studio leaving at the end of 2020, which we already went over. Those are like the individuals who are now going on to make their own horror game. Says here, meanwhile, the producer of Bloodborne and Demon's Souls remake said he was leaving SIE Japan at the end of 2020. People with knowledge of the matter told VGC that Sony's Japan studio simply hasn't been profitable enough in recent years. The developer wanted to create games that appealed to the Japanese market first, with hopes of having global appeal, while PlayStation wants the kind of global hits that its other first-party studios produce. Now, I think this is probably the most important part of this entire report, because it makes it very clear why Japan studio is winding down. And it's not closing down. It's not like Sony is shuttering the studio entirely, but when it comes to expecting original game development in a more significant way, like we've seen in the past from the studio, it's just not going to happen anymore. And it's definitely disappointing news to anybody who is fans of these games. But this right here tells you what you need to know. And this to me is kind of crazy, because it really goes to show that there is a price to be paid for the AAA focus that Sony has. Now, anybody who's been following this channel for some time, you know that that's always been something that I've been advocating for, which is I like the big AAA games that Sony delivers. They do a really good job. They've been getting better and better at it year over year. And it's clearly their main priority. In fact, I've made many videos in the past explaining why Sony is doubling and in some cases even tripling down on AAA game development to produce these big hit games. But this is unfortunately a side effect of this, right? Where if one of their studios is not kind of participating in the creation of big AAA games, or they're just not able to produce hit games, or as it says here, games with a wider appeal, then they're probably going to, cut them out and trim the fat, I guess, for lack of a better term here, because Sony's just focused on having those big games. Now, I don't think this means that Sony doesn't want to have any like smaller single A or double, I don't even know if single A is a term, but like double A games or indie games. Obviously, Sony still cares about that. But when it comes to like their first party, I feel like they are looking for more significant results. I've been saying this for some time. I think it's kind of obvious that Sony is trying to mold as many of their internal first-party studios into AAA studios as they possibly can. Now, whether or not that means that going forward, their goal is to essentially make sure that every single studio they have is a AAA studio, I don't know. It seems like they kind of are leaning in that direction. Just look at what they did with Sony Bend. And it's not a bad thing, right? But Sony Bend with Days Gone, that was a developer that was not known for AAA games. The last AAA game they made was like for the Vita with Uncharted. I think it's called Golden Abyss. And before that, Siphon Filter. But they spent many, many years just not producing AAA games. And then Sony's like, look, we want to keep you as a studio. We want to give you an opportunity to, flex your AAA muscles again. Here's a budget, make what you want. And then we got Days Gone. There's been a lot of talk that, Sony's London studio, they have now also been given the opportunity to create a AAA game. Look at what they did with Housemarque, even though that's not a first-party studio. If that's a studio they were ever considering bringing on board as a first party, they're seeing what they can do in the AAA space with Returnal. I'm pointing all of this out because, to me, it's been kind of obvious that Sony Japan hasn't really been looked at as like a big AAA studio, and not every studio under Sony right now fits that bill either. I mean, you look at Media Molecule. I mean, I'm not going to lie, guys. Like, anybody who's a fan of Media Molecules as a studio, you might want to, pay attention to what's going to happen with them, because this does not bode well for them. I don't know how profitable Dreams was. I mean, it was a critical hit, but I don't think it sold that well at all, honestly. I don't know what the player base is like right now. It's shocking to me that game has not gone free to play or expanded to the PS4 or even PC, right? Maybe it will be coming to PC later this year. But this is just, the side effect of Sony's intense focus on AAA, and it's like a double-edged sword, honestly, because on one side it's like it's great because we want those AAA titles and we want to just constantly see that come out of Sony, but on the other hand, it may come, there is a price to be paid for all of this. You know what I mean? Like, there's always a price to be paid in some regard. And, some people are going to be totally fine with this and don't care. Others are kind of devastated at this idea that, the creators of Ape Escape, Gravity Rush, as well as many others, they're just pretty much gone now. This also calls into question what's going on with Silent Hill. I'm going to be honest with you guys. First of all, we have to understand Silent Hill was always a rumor, and it was one that I obviously was very excited about, but it was still just a rumor. We have yet to have any type of official confirmation from Konami or any other outside party. It seems extremely unlikely that Sony at this point has any involvement with Silent Hill, at least their Japan studio, when it comes to the potential Silent Hill reboot. So that just seems to be the reality of the situation. But for all we know, Silent Hill maybe isn't real after all of this. But yeah, so let's go over this statement that Sony officially put out here. And the reason why I'm saving this for last is frankly because their statement isn't anything that significant. It's very much PR speak. But I really had to, read this last part to you guys where it's explaining that, they're just not producing these AAA games that Sony wants. So it says here, update, Sony Interactive Entertainment has sent VGC a statement confirming that what remains of Japan Studio will be absorbed by Team ASOBI as per our report. It also stated that external development and other divisions will be relocated within the PlayStation business on April 1st. This is what a spokesperson said. And before I read that statement, I do also want to acknowledge the fact that, it's not all bad news. Team ASOBI is going to remain, and there's a heavy emphasis on ASTRO, which is great because I loved that game. I know that it was a hit. Astrobot Rescue Mission was like one of PSVR's first big hit games, and Astro's Playroom on the PS5 was incredible. So it really does sound like this team specifically is basically getting the opportunity to make a full-blown, I don't know if you can call it AAA, but like a fully fleshed out ASTRO game for the PlayStation platform in the future, which, that is something worth noting. So this is what Sony said. In an effort to further strengthen business operations, SIE can confirm PlayStation Studios Japan Studio will be reorganized into a new organization on April 1st. Japan Studio will be recentered to Team ASOBI, the creative team behind Astro's Playroom, allowing the team to focus on a single vision and build on the popularity of Astro's Playroom. In addition, the roles of external production, software localization, and IP management of Japan Studio titles will be concentrated within the global functions of PlayStation Studios. So, yeah, I mean, it's not all bad, but, to those who really enjoyed these original titles that came from Sony's Japan Studio, one thing I've seen a lot of people point to is Bloodborne. Right? Like, this pretty much confirms we will not get a Bloodborne 2. Well, I'm going to be candid right now. I don't think we were ever going to get a Bloodborne 2. Now, I'm not saying this basically makes it so that it's impossible. No, it's Sony owns the Bloodborne IP, and Miyazaki even said in the past that that's basically up to Sony, not up to him. And they're probably shoulder deep right now into Elden Ring anyway. And Japan Studio definitely had an involvement in the creation and development of Bloodborne, but let's be honest, when people look at Bloodborne, do we really talk about Sony's Japan Studio, or is it more, this is a From Software title, right? Like, and I think it's safe to say that that's more of a From Software title, and you wouldn't necessarily need Sony Japan's involvement in the creation of a Bloodborne 2. If Sony ever wanted to do a Bloodborne 2, it would be with From Software, and From Software themselves could certainly handle that task. I would argue that if it was the other way around and From Software wasn't involved, but let's just say it was Sony Japan developing it, people wouldn't be happy about that. That's not to downplay the impact that Sony Japan Studio had on the development of the game. I don't mean to make it sound that way, but that's just the reality of it. When people think of Bloodborne, they think of From Software. So I don't think that this means we will never see a continuation of some sort to Bloodborne. I think it's very much possible we will. It just seems like Sony Japan won't have any involvement in it. Yeah, that's pretty much the news, guys. Again, it's disappointing. It's not good news. I mean, it depends on how you look at it. If you're somebody who is like a major fan of the AAA games that Sony produces, and you really are not a fan or have not really engaged with these games, because that's another thing as well. These games that Sony's Japan Studios made really haven't sold well at all. So that's probably another, big reason they're very much focused on appealing to the Japanese audience. So if you're somebody who never really cared about these games and you really only care about Sony's big AAA hits, then this probably doesn't really matter to you that much. And if anything, and this is just, again, trying to find some type of silver lining here, maybe you feel good knowing that, well, Sony really does care about the AAA space more than we even thought, to the point where it's like, look, we got to trim the fat here. If you are somebody who was a big fan of these games, then this is obviously very bad news, very disappointing, but at least they're still keeping the studio alive, and it sounds very much like they're basically putting all of their resources and focus on continuing with Astrobot. So if that's what Japan Studio ends up becoming known for in the future, is really just Astrobot, I think that's fine. It still lives on in some way, shape, or form, and in a significant way. I think Astro is basically a new mascot for PlayStation, but their external development team, I think, will probably still help. They're being concentrated into a different sector of PlayStation, but they're still going to be around to help development, with games like Demon's Souls and whatever else may be coming in the future. So there it is, guys. Definitely had to take time to talk about this. We will probably talk more extensively about this, and I will engage with you guys tomorrow during the next episode of Press X Podcast, because I will be interested to see what you have to say, and I'm sure that there's more we can say on this. But that's going to do it for now. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Again, leave the video a like, subscribe if you're new, hit the bell notification icon, and feel free to share the video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.